Welcome, everyone. We're very glad you're here. My name is Mary Beth Stibbins, and I'm with the Braver Angels event delivery team. And we have a special program and resource today on navigating fear and anger with the upcoming election. I want to introduce Luis Mojica. He is a somatic therapist, life coach, nutritionist, and holistic health practitioner. He's here to guide us today in building distress tolerance and calming our nervous systems when we experience high stress, something many of us are facing as we approach the upcoming election. Luis is going to teach us how to manage those reflexive overdrive responses and help us learn to stay grounded and resilient during tense conversations. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Mary Beth. Hi, everybody. My name is Luis Mojica. Here, happy to be with you. Really happy to be with Brave Angels as well, because I love their work so much. And if you don't know them, if you came through us instead of coming through them, you definitely want to check them out. They're doing important work in this country. I'm going to introduce myself and then my team, and then we're going to get into a couple things to help us understand a little more of what you're here for and what you want to learn and leave with. And then we're going to go into the session, some teaching, some lecturing, some actual demonstration of how this works, and then lots of feedback and weaving from you all at the end to see where this went for you. So I'm a somatic therapist. That's someone that works primarily with the body around events that are traumatic, around people that have PTSD, people that have syndromes and symptoms, autoimmune illnesses. And I also am a nutritionist. So I combine the two together to help people essentially recover from stress and trauma in a way that's beyond just thinking or talking about it. And my company is called Holistic Life Navigation, is the name of the modality that I invented from weaving these things together that formally or actually are separate. Nutrition's usually over here, therapy's over here. I brought the two together and added somatics, which had been really effective for my clients and myself. I'm going to introduce you to my team, and then we're going to do a 10-minute little kind of weaving amongst yourselves in some breakout rooms. So you'll be in a room with 4 to 5 other people for about 10 minutes, and we're going to give you some prompts around what to share that you're interested in from this session, which you get to come back and tell us what you heard. And then that helps inform me and Camille as we teach you about this work. So the first person I'll introduce is my co-teacher today, Camille Leek. I'll let you tell them whatever you'd like them to know about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Camille. Like Louise said, I'll be co-teaching with him today. I am also a somatic coach. But what brought me to this work was I'm a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. And in particular, I like to help people get comfortable with being uncomfortable, specifically expanding their capacity for difference. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today, and looking forward to see what comes up.
And one thing Camille will be doing today is she'll be calling on people when their hands go up, and she'll be fielding some DMs when I ask you to directly chat with her around certain things as we approach those topics. Next is Marika Malaya.
Hi, everyone. I am the operations manager at HLN and also an assistant today to Luis. So I'm here for any questions people have around content or about HLN. You can just reach out to me in the chat.
Thank you, Marika. And then we have Evan Adams.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm the admin manager here at Holistic Life Navigation. And if you also, same for me, if you have any content questions about Holistic Life Navigation, anything like that, feel free to send me a DM.
And so the whole time we're here, if you look at the bottom of your screen, if you're new to this, you see where it says chat. You click on chat, then it will say to. There's a little blue kind of label of someone's name. You click on that, and you can scroll down to Evan or Marika. If you have any direct questions about content, anything else Braver Angels related, you can click on someone with an asterisk next to their name. Okay? So that's how you can directly DM one of us when you have a question. So I want to orient you to a prompt, okay? And then we're going to toss you into some breakout rooms for 10 minutes to kind of weave amongst each other. They're unrecorded, so you can have a lot of fun just going in there and getting to know each other and speaking and seeing what it is you're here to experience and learn. But the main prompt I want you to really sit with and notice and feel into as I share is when you think of the upcoming election, when you think of the upcoming election, what do you feel in your body? Just pause right now and notice that. Is there tension? Is there excitement? Is there fear? Is there anger? Is there joy? Is there nothing? Nothing happens when I think about it. What happens in your body when you think about the upcoming election? It's the one thing. The other thing, what's the one thing you really want to learn today, right? As we approach the election, think about what Camille said, capacity for difference. What's your capacity for difference? What's your capacity for the other side, whoever that is for you, winning? What's your capacity for that? What do you want to learn to be able to stay grounded in yourself and have relationships with people from all sides, regardless of who wins? What do you need to do that today? So feel into that. You'll go into the breakouts for 10 minutes, share amongst each other. Keep track of the time. You'll see it's in the top right. Ideally, I usually say go in alphabetical order based on the first name. That will help everyone figure out who goes first, who goes last, middle, that kind of thing. And then you'll come back, you'll share with us some things you learned, and then we'll get into the session. So we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Take a moment. Take a moment as you come back. Just see what it's like as you come back to check out the room, see what it's like to have had that experience. And take a moment to let it settle. Like, what is it what did you learn from that? What is it you're really here for? What are you curious about? What are the specific tools you need, to navigate and work with what comes up when you think about the upcoming election, when you think about people on the other side, what happens in your body, and what you learn from your group. We're going to go into 10 minutes of sharing. So the way this works is you go to the bottom, you click raise hand, and you'll raise your little virtual hand. And we have a timer. So everybody will get 30 seconds. And when the time goes off, please finish your statement as soon as possible. If it keeps going, Camille will remind you the timer went off. And that's going to give me a lot of good information about who I'm really speaking to today, who I'm teaching, and what it is I need to focus on more. Don't name anybody that was in your group. So keep the names of the people who spoke anonymous. Just speak about the content that came up or what came up in you and what you're curious about. So that being said, you can raise your hands and we'll go into a 10-minute sharing, and then we'll go into our session and I'll begin teaching you some of this work.
Libby, please come off mute.
Hi, thanks everybody. Thanks for doing this. It's just so valuable. I just wanted to say that as a person who has worked in elections in various capacities for decades, and also I run a dialogue program where we support people to talk across difference, political and every other kind of difference. I wanted to flag the fact that in my lifetime, I can say that there has never been a need to have a workshop like this at the level there is now, and there's a reason for that. This is a very unusual election for a number of reasons. Part of it is who is running, and part of it is the technology.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Libby.
Jeanne, please correct me.
It's correct, Jeannie. I just want to be able to have conversations with people who I don't know how they're voting, or I know they're voting differently than I am. I don't want to have to just stay quiet. I want to talk to people about why they feel the way they do.
Beautiful, Jeannie. Thank you.
Dot.
One thing that I learned from our small group, I loved what this one person said, was basically to unhook what we cannot control.
Carol.
I was rather surprised by, I guess it shouldn't have been a surprise because we're all at Braver Angels for a reason, but how ubiquitous the problem with communicating over disagreement about politics now within our family. It seemed like it was very universal in our group, which was kind of surprising to me. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Ina.
Yeah, so I am actually coming from working with Luis, and my particular curiosity is around how to use somatics and some of the things we're learning around these political issues and thoughts and conversations where it's very triggering and in a way, regardless who wins, it's going to be triggering for me and to a lesser or greater extent.
Bill.
Okay, we had some technical difficulties, so I can only speak for myself. I consider myself a purple. I'm a centrist. And what I'm trying to get out of this is how to hold the calm, how to be a bridge builder, how to help my friends on the left and the right keep talking to each other.
Mary. Oh, you're still on mute, Mary.
Okay. I need to know how to stay present and keep my brain engaged so that A, I can listen and understand people, B, so I can ask questions to learn more about what they mean, and C, remember what my beliefs are. I mean, I think we're all caught up in emotions in this and I'm not able to articulate policies as much. And I think that's something lacking in the overall conversation.
Willis.
Yeah, I'm struggling to figure out how to engage in a conversation that starts on the basis of misinformation. Yeah, do you correct their information, which obviously starts an argument. So when you're in that world of so prevalent misinformation, I'm looking for new strategies of how to deal with that part of society.
Andrew.
I normally find the most fruitful way to talk to people about policy is to forget the policy issues and talk about where do they get their information. So much of what we believe is derived information, and is so fruitful normally to say, not what do you believe, but why do you believe that? What are the sources you use, and who would you take as commanding the field of view on that? That normally leads to much more fruitful conversations.
Samantha.
Yeah, I would like to learn ways to calm down, get my heart to stop racing, get my breath normal when people are saying things that I believe are lies.
Ruth.
We also had some technical difficulties in the breakout room that I was in, but I would say that when the question was asked, my immediate response was, I don't feel anything. And then spontaneously a breath escaped. And so I think I would just like to be more aware of what's actually happening for me so that it doesn't control me in ways that are that I don't want. To be more aware and able to manage.
Gloria.
In our group, we spoke about many feelings of tenseness, anxiety, muscles, necks, my body parts hurting. Also some hope at the vice presidential debate that there was more civility than typical. That was hopeful, but also the reality, one of our members lives in North Carolina, and they're dealing with a very real issue of Helene and the destruction and the emotion that that has brought into this.
And I just want to say we're going to only do these last 4 people, so no new hands after this, please.
Michael.
Sorry, I was muted. I want to share a little secret. When I am entering any conversation, especially about some controversial political topics, I don't assume that I'm right. So I am starting with this position that I was wrong so many times. Why should I believe that this time is different? So it could happen that I am wrong and whoever I'm talking with has something right.
David.
Hi. This election is in the context of a society that feels like it's kind of unraveling on a lot of levels. And so no matter what happens in the election, those issues and the conflicts around them are going to remain. So I'm looking for ways to manage anxiety, bring down reactivity, and focus on what I can do in the face of it all without being caught up in emotional reactivity for this election and beyond.
Kamala Devi.
In our group, what stood out for me was that I think all of us, there was a feeling of connection because all of us were feeling very similar emotions and experiences. And I realized after that I had no idea what anybody's party affiliation was in the circle, and it didn't matter.
So what Kamala Devi just said is something that we're going to be playing with a lot today around the actual tending to rupture work. That's what tends to make conflict resolution somatically, as I'm going to teach it and show you, so effective is we go beyond the story and the belief and we go straight to the human. And there's kind of this innate ability to connect to someone just through their humanity outside of their policy beliefs and outside of their political affiliation. And we'll go into that and I'll teach you a bit about what happens in our bodies when we're having these discussions and when we feel that thing coming up in us, that rush. And like a bunch of you said, how do I not have that happen so I can speak to somebody? That's really the piece here. Is there anything in the chat, Camille, you think is important to share?
No, we didn't get anything in the chat.
Okay, great. So let's just start diving in. Okay. I wrote a couple things down because I thought they were highlights to what I'm going to be covering already. And I liked the way I heard them. So when someone said about being caught up in emotions, that's where I'm going to start. I want everyone to consider that emotions are not mental states. Emotions are biological, biochemical reactions. They're physical. They happen in our bodies. Our minds identify them. So I can say sad, I can say angry, I can categorize and organize them. But what's the thing I'm really organizing or categorizing? It's a felt sense, it's a feeling. So you can think about it right now. When you consider the other side, when you consider a policy that terrifies you or angers you, when you consider a policy you love and adore, notice the sensations neck down. Like notice your chest, notice your solar plexus, like your rib cage kind of gut area, and then notice right below your belly button where your belly is. Just those 3 areas, like our viscera right here. This is where that rush tends to happen when we're getting overwhelmed, when we're getting triggered, when we're getting angry, right? So we want to start connecting to that more than anything. Because when we're not connecting to that, guess what happens? We dissociate from that, which means I can't feel it. And then the behavior takes over from that place. That's where we become aggressive. That's where we start yelling at somebody. That's when we start talking really fast. And when we go into that stress response, it's deemed a stress response because you make a lot of adrenaline when it's happening. You actually lose the part of your brain that allows you to be conscious to where you are and to who's in front of you. What's happening is you're reading the other person and the other person's beliefs as a threat to your life. That's what's happening in that moment. Even though cognitively you might not think it is, cognitively you might think it is, depending on what it is you're talking about. But the body, regardless, believes this is a potential threat that I have to survive. And when it comes to conversation, the way we try to survive the threat is by telling the other person why they're wrong. If we can convince the other person and make them realize they're wrong, I can feel safe again. I can feel calm again. I can relax again. So what's fascinating about this, when we think about conflict and rupture within a relationship around political parties, I'm not really caring about the other person. Cognitively, I think I'm trying to make them think something so like they can be enlightened or they can know it's true. But it really comes back to me. I'm trying to feel better because my body feels so dysregulated by what they believe. I just want you to consider that for a moment. Think of the times yourself when you're with somebody and you're getting into one of those arguments and it's getting really heated, or you're feeling that urgency in you, like that huge rush that comes through you to like jump on them, like literally or figuratively, right? That comes from your own internal panic. That's not about them yet, which is interesting. We think it is. We really do, because cognitively we're like, no, you're causing this anger in me. It's like, nope, it's in you, right? So we first have to be able to locate where that lives inside of us. And this is why I got into somatics. I was a nutritionist for 10 years, working in private practice with people. So many things you see as a nutritionist. And there was such a group of people that their syndromes and their symptoms were coming from their trauma, their post-traumatic episodes and events that they went through. And I thought, that's interesting. How can an event, how can like a mental illness, that's what we thought about trauma at the time, how can a mental illness have anything to do with symptoms in your body? Like that's in your mind. And then I started realizing trauma and stress and overwhelm and heartbreak and grief, all these things that we categorize and analyze mentally, these are all biochemical, biological experiences. When you feel overwhelmed, your adrenal glands are working overtime, which means your blood is flooded with adrenaline, which means within a second or two, your blood vessels are constricting. Your blood pressure is rising. That's that feeling you have when you feel that rush coming up. It's your blood pressure rising because you're adrenalized, right? Your neurotransmitters are firing. So your brain's lighting up, your nervous system's lighting up. That's why we get shaky. That's why we can't think of policy. You see this happening in debates. You see how people dehumanize each other and yell at each other and bring up each other's characters. They're not in their bodies. They're not taking a breath and coming from that curious, open mind. They're in an adrenalized state. And we do the same thing. It's what happens when we come into contact with difference. Someone who thinks different than me, someone who looks different than me, someone who acts different than me. Something in us starts to have this ancient story I need to protect because I don't know you. I don't know what you're going to do next. Part of it is inherited. It's how we survived. Tribes, longest time, stayed in their own categories, stayed in their own groups. So there's an ancestral piece to this that we don't want to deny. And there's a learned piece of this, where when another side is a mythology, like when you don't know them, you just know things about them, people are telling you, they're the boogeyman, they're a monster in your mind, and you fear them. And so by the time you come into contact with them, you've probably had thousands of hours of being told why you should fear this person, why you should fear this belief. And that fear, remember, is not mental, it is somatic, it's biological. So that thing I told you about, where the adrenal glands work overtime and your blood pressure rises and your neurotransmitters fire and you can't think straight, that's what happens when you come into contact with someone who's different, that you have an unconscious or a conscious bias toward because of what you've learned about them. And I think when people talk about the current state of America in terms of our polarity and our division, and especially our inability to talk about these things, I think we've always been polarized in terms of our beliefs. We've always been on different sides of things. But the inability to talk about it, that's what's so stressful. And that's what's so concerning. It's like, why can't we sit at a table and talk about this anymore? So think about what I'm saying about the mythology of the other side. And one thing that has really allowed this to become, let's say, more practiced is technology. Because with social media and with a screen that most of us carry around in our pockets, we're constantly getting information about the other side. And it's very different when you're getting information about somebody from someone who doesn't like that person. It's going to be biased regardless of what side or policy you're talking about. We do the same thing, don't we? When we don't like somebody and someone says, "Oh, what do you think about that guy across the street?" What are we going to say, right? We're going to have a story proving why this person isn't a good person or why they're dangerous or why what they believe isn't good or why it's dangerous. So, like, one of the questions I like to ask everybody is think about how much practice you've had already constricting against a certain person or idea in your mind before you've even met them. That's polarity right there. That's bias. That's even going into discrimination and prejudice, depending on how you treat that person or group when you see them and how you treat them to other people, even in closed circuit conversations. What's the story I'm telling about the other side? And what story has been told to me? We carry those stories around in our bodies, right? They're not just stories that live in our mind, they go into our being. So when someone says something about a policy, think right now about a policy you really don't like. Notice right away what happens in your body. Notice your breathing, notice your shoulders, notice your stomach. Are these areas kind of calm and soft? Are they tensing up? Do they get pressure? Right? What we think is experienced in the body. So you can't have a controversial conversation with someone unless you know how to be in your body while you're doing it. Unless you know how to coach your body through being able to even be in front of that person and have a disagreement with them. And that's what somatics taught me when I was working with so many families, when I was doing coaching and nutrition work with groups and families and businesses. I would see so many people in conflict. And what was fascinating is I would work one-on-one with somebody first, and then one-on-one with the other person, like the partner or the business partner or the child, whatever it was. And then we come together in a room. These people's perceptions of each other were wild. Like I thought they were a different person. Like someone was talking about their wife, let's say. I thought this was like the worst person in the world based on what I was being told. She would walk in the room, I would already be braced expecting this really kind of vile person. And I just adored her. I thought, this is interesting. And then she would talk about her partner, who I had already worked with 3 or 4 sessions, who I already adored. And I was like, wow, that's how you see that person. And so it was fascinating to really get how one person lives in someone else's body and mind differently than they might in mine or yours, right? And so I started getting curious. Well, what's the thing that keeps us from connecting, right? What's the thing that keeps us from resolving a conflict, let's say? And it really, for me, comes down to the body. It comes down to this desire to be curious, like we want to be open-minded and curious. But to do that, you actually have to have the capacity for the big sensations that come up when someone says something offensive or triggering or shocking or something completely opposes your way of life or being. You have to actually have a practice to know what to do when that arises. Because when you don't, a reflexive response takes over. We shut down, we talk really fast and try to prove our point. We get angry and rageful, and scream at someone. Sometimes we avoid people altogether. Other times we people please, we just go along because we're too afraid to say how we really feel. And that really hurts, pretending you think about, care about something that you actually don't, that you believe in something you don't, so people still like you. So these are all these reflexive things. In somatic psychology, we call them trauma responses or stress responses. These are reflexive things the body does when the body is taken over by that charge, by that adrenaline, because it goes into a survival state. So it leaves a state of curiosity. Even your peripheral vision shuts off. You can't even perceive what's around you. You become narrow-minded, and literal narrow vision takes over, as we're meant to do, because when you're in a threat, your animal body wants you out of that. When there's a burning building, you don't want to be curious. You want to look for the exit and run. So the same thing is happening in your body. This is the real trick. When I'm talking to somebody about something that's completely opposite my belief and is controversial, and we're disagreeing, the same stress hormones are being made in my body as we're sitting at like a table having tea, as if the house was burning down. It's the same stress hormones. It doesn't matter about the event, it's the biochemistry we're working with. And that's what we have to learn how to be with. Because if we don't honor that and get to know that and learn that, you're going to be treating a conversation like a burning building. You're going to be running over the person, yelling at the person, panicking with the person. You're not going to be able to stop and be really curious. You're not going to be able to ask, like someone asked earlier, why do you believe that? You're not going to be able to go in with a curiosity and even, like Michael said, an assumption, well, I'm already wrong, which creates a beautiful open mind. Like, I'm already wrong. So you have nothing to defend. Two people are some of my heroes and role models in this. How many of you know Daryl Davis's work? Have you ever seen his work? really important man to check out if you haven't. Daryl Davis is an amazing person. He is a Black man who consciously befriends KKK members. So he goes to their group meetings and stands right in the front and looks at them in the eyes while they're talking. And then he meets with them afterwards. He's done this for about almost 40 years now. And his only goal is to connect with them and make a friend. He never asks them to lead the Klan. He never tries to make them see his humanity. He sits with them for about an hour and asks them questions. How do you believe this? Who taught you this? Why do you believe this? And he just sits there and listens. And usually what happens when a Klan member will say something to him like, well, you're less intelligent than me, most of us would get super offended and we jump back at the person. But Daryl doesn't do that because he has a relationship to his body. He can feel when something's coming up and he can remind himself, I'm okay. I'm safe. I'm choosing to be here. This person's not violating me. We're just talking about what we believe. And it settles him and he gets really curious. And so then the Klan leader often will be like, after 20 minutes, like, why are you letting me talk? Like he's shocked that Daryl's just letting him go on and on about dehumanizing him essentially. And Daryl's like, because I'm truly curious. And then the Klan leader will start asking Daryl questions about his life and his background. And Daryl's answers and his experiences and how he treats this man is the opposite of what this man has been told to believe about a Black man. So in that moment, the mythology I was talking about earlier starts to disintegrate. Something else starts to emerge, which is, oh, two people connecting regardless of their beliefs or their race or their identity, just connecting over their shared humanity. And after 40 years, 200 Klan leaders gave him their robes and left the Klan. He didn't ask them to. It's happened, and it's this incredible phenomenon behind that he is part of his legacy. So he's one of my heroes in this, and he proves every day that this is possible in really extreme situations. And he started this in the 80s, mind you. So this isn't something he just started last year. It's been a long time. The other man is Bill Riddick. Bill Riddick is he's the subject of a Netflix movie called Perfect Enemies. Perfect Enemies. And it's an amazing true story about Durham, North Carolina, where they were doing one of the last schools that was still segregated was desegregating. And he created this thing called the charrette process, where he went in and spent 11 days. On one side of the room were pro-segregators, mostly Klan leaders. On the other side were pro-integration. And he sat in this room and he mediated. It was like a big family therapy session for 11 days. And what he teaches people, like the foundational, the thing I find most valuable for thing from him, the most valuable statement isn't even the right word. It's almost like a prayer. But he says, what everyone believes is sacred to them. What everyone believes is sacred to them. Now, if you're able to be with that cognitively, that's a great first step. If you can't be with that cognitively, you're not ready. That's okay. Just kind of hear me out. But his belief that everything someone believes is sacred to them, it helps him be less afraid of the belief in the person. And it helps create this equanimity between the two. Oh, the thing I'm fighting for makes me feel safe. It's special to me. I hold it close to my heart. And the thing you're fighting for makes you feel safe. It's special to you. You hold it close to your heart. So you walk in with a sense of reverence and even respect for what this person believes. Not that you actually start believing it yourself, but it gives you this distance of, wow, they're just like me. The thing they believe feels really sacred to them. And that flips the script, because what we tend to do is go in, and I love the question about misinformation. We go in, and even the idea of misinformation, who decides? And we have this feeling, this conviction that my information is the right one. Yours is just, if you only knew, you would see mine's the right one, right? That's not going in thinking what they believe is sacred. What I believe is sacred, what you believe isn't. That's what that is. So immediately you are disparaging each other, and the connection is already ruptured. Because I'm not even curious or able to respect your belief. I'm trying to get in there to change it. And at the end of the charrette process, this amazing thing that ended up happening, the main guy that was fighting against segregation, who was a Klan leader, ripped up his card membership in front of the entire Klan and the whole auditorium of people. Because through Bill's help, he saw this other woman who happened to be a Black woman. He saw her as an equal and as a sacred sister, essentially. And it transformed his mind, blew his mind, and transformed the whole community. And that's what I love about this work. Someone else said this in their share. Even if whoever gets elected, it doesn't change us overnight, everybody. Yes, some things change depending on who's in office, no doubt, especially representation and the kind of the emotional landscape across the country of how we feel represented and what we see on the TV and certain executive orders, absolutely. But legislation doesn't change how we treat each other. It tries to, it doesn't. What really matters to me is individual connection through difference. Not like legislating that, but all of us individually. And everyone's like, he must be a libertarian. But if we feel into that sense of self, like how do I show up to someone I disagree with and find commonality? That is enough to transform the country, regardless of who's in office, right? And regardless of who's in office, if we're not practicing that, our culture will not repair. It doesn't matter who's in the White House to me. So for me, a cultural repair happens when the collective learns how to do this work with each other, learns how to be curious, learns how to sit with somebody, learns how to sit with difference without it feeling like a panic attack. Because the strangest thing about America is we share very intimate space and quarters with people completely different from us. That is like our privilege of being Americans. Not everyone gets to do that. In other places, there's lots of monocultures and mono beliefs. You don't have to really challenge or be challenged too much because we all agree. That's not America. And that's one thing that makes us very interesting and beautiful. It's like, wow, my neighbor is completely different from me. The bus driver is completely different from me. The cashier is completely different from me. Like, that's really amazing. But we need practices to be able to coexist with so much difference. And we don't really have any. What we're trying to do is create sameness amongst an extremely diverse group of people. And we need to get rid of the sameness and learn how can I be with the difference of them. What would you like to add here, Camille? What would you want to bring in?
Yeah, I just want to underscore that we generally do not have a practice, a habit of familiarity, not just for us as individuals, but through our lineage of being with difference. For example, think about how common it is here to hear in the States. We don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. Now, why were we brought up being told that from the beginning? Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about politics. Because the only reason that we would talk about those things is if we're having a debate. That is, if I'm trying to persuade someone or convert someone to my point of view. And so most of us are actually really well versed at having debates. We're not really well versed at having conversations. That is an exchange of perspectives or experiences. One of the questions I'm oftentimes asked in my work as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner is, Camille, at what point do we just agree to disagree? And I say from the very beginning. That is, if it is in fact my intent, and that's a big if it is in fact my intent to have a conversation with someone, if it is my intent to go into a conversation with curiosity, seeking to understand, then agreeing, coming to a consensus isn't even part of on my sphere, on what I'm trying to achieve. Yet that's usually what we orient to. Because just like Luis was saying, if we don't reach that consensus, that puts us in this state of, well, what's the right answer? Or, something's wrong. And it puts us in that life or death situation. And so we need that consensus, or we need that right answer. We need that debate for us to feel actually a bit more grounded. And so what we're talking about here is expanding our capacity for difference. And really what we mean is expanding our capacity for nuance, for gray, for ambiguity. What is my capacity to be with not coming to a consensus, not coming to a right answer, not getting someone to believe the same way that I do, or debunking what they believe? And again, it can seem really simple because we oftentimes say that we want to have a conversation, but we can begin to really get curious. Is that true? Am I seeking to have a conversation, or am I seeking to have a debate? Am I seeking to understand, or am I seeking to persuade? And it goes back to the idea, does this feel like a life or death situation? And part of what helps me do my work as a diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner, when people may be saying things that can seem really derogatory, is really orienting to the idea is what's happening right now in front of me, a life or death situation. And if I can orient to the fact that it's not, then I'm able to stay in a place where I can have a conversation with that individual, even if they themselves may be in a dysregulated state. And then lastly, I just want to say that in that same vein of me, one, attuning to the fact that it's not a life or death situation and seeking to understand rather than persuade, one of the things that has been incredibly powerful, both cognitively, but even more so somatically, and it's the work I do around expanding capacity for difference, is really attuning to the fact that there is nothing I can say or do to change what anyone else believes or does. Because if I could, I would have had said it already and there'd be world peace. So if I can attune to that fact that there's nothing I can say or do to change what they believe or to change what they do, what I can do is potentially share something with them that may spark curiosity in them. And they might want to do some work. They might want to explore something. And that's exactly what we saw, like in the examples Luis gave with Daryl Davis and Bill Riddick. They weren't seeking to change these people, to make them leave the KKK or to change their perspectives, but they were seeking to cultivate spaces where maybe they were exposed to something that they hadn't considered before, or something they were exposed to something that sparked curiosity in them. And as a result of that curiosity, they then decided to make a change.
And really hear that first part that Camille said about not trying to agree, not needing to agree, like going in, just being open to disagreeing, like, okay, it's going to end with a disagreement instead of we have to end with an agreement. Let's think about that state I'm teaching you about in the body, that biochemical state of stress. So that's what we tend to like associate with threat or danger or overwhelm, right? When we say we're triggered, overwhelmed, these kind of things. When people say things like, I feel safe, or I feel calm, or I feel level, or I feel solid or grounded, it's the opposite biochemistry. So the adrenal glands are not working so hard, which means your blood vessels have stopped constricting, which means your blood pressure is lowering. Your heart rate is lowering. Your breath is getting deeper. Your shoulders start settling. You start to feel the chair you're on. Your mind comes back. You have the clarity to speak. That's a state of safety. You know, when we talk about feeling safe or actually physically being safe, that's how the body registers that it has survived something. Why that's so important is we tend to orient to the other for our safety. So when I'm sitting with someone that believes differently than I do, they need to agree with me before I leave here, or I can't feel safe, or I can't feel settled, or I can't relax. You know, how many times have you heard yourself say or someone else say, I won't be able to sleep, or I won't be able to relax or find peace until blah, blah, blah happens. So until something outside of me changes, I won't be able to find any safety in myself. The main thing that I teach people and that Camille teaches people with me and on her own is how do we actually cultivate that without the other person having to change first? This is what allows Bill Riddick to do what he does. This allows Daryl Davis to do what he does and many of my other mentors. It's because they're not looking for the outcome to decide if they can be safe or not. They're like, I'm already okay. And they're going into the controversy from, I'm already okay. I want you all to really consider that for yourselves right now. Do you go into these discussions with people from a place of, I'm already okay? Or are you going in from a place of, everything's falling apart, this person's part of it, I need to change them? And imagine how that feels when someone comes at you, wanting to change you and attaching the world's issues to your beliefs. That's a big thing to bring somebody. That's not going to create a repair in a relationship. That's definitely not going to make Thanksgiving dinner an enjoyable experience, especially when you don't see your family a lot and you're from different sides of the political aisle. But what could is, I'm actually okay. What's it like to be with these people from me being okay instead of my okay and my safety and my sense of self relying on how they are, what they believe in, what they're going to do? That's going to be the big change that I'm hoping to ignite in some of you in this session to start really understanding how do we get in contact then with people and stay in that place. How do we have a connection with someone, a controversy? I always think of freedom of speech as such an amazing thing. It was made for controversy. It was not made for things you already agreed with. So we need to have a practice for controversy, don't we? We don't have one. Someone says something offensive, we fly off the handle or run away. What if we knew how to be with that? Imagine the power that comes from not being so offended so easily or scared by what someone believes, but by being able to breathe and stay in your body and get really curious and create a relationship with those people. That's what I'm really interested in. That's what I've been doing for the past almost 20 years. It's been amazing to really play with people totally different from me and find an amazing connection. And in that amazing connection, vehemently disagreeing with each other, yet still having a beautiful connection. Something Camille was reminding me about earlier is this work is not to deny your beliefs. Remember what I said, right? What Bill Riddick says, what you believe is sacred, right? What you vote in, what policies, all these are sacred to you. I'm not asking anyone to throw away what's sacred to them. But think about that. If I don't want you to throw away what's sacred from you, why do I want someone else to? It's not about trying to get someone to get rid of what's sacred. It's about how do we connect over the differences that we find sacred, over the differences that feel safe for us. It's amazing about America is one side wins, one side grieves every 4 to 8 years, right? So we have to have this practice in humility and grounding because we're always going to have a different party that opposes certain things we agree with being representing the country. Different Supreme Court, right? Congress, we're going to have different experiences where someone is representing us and we don't agree with them. We have to learn how to be with that, right? How to stay connected in our communities and with each other as that's happening, because I think that's where a lot of our transformation is going to come from, and just our practical ability to be with big changes as a country and as a world as they come. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to do a short group practice with everybody. Now, in the meantime, I just want everyone to orient. After the group practice, I'm going to do a demo, 15, 20-minute demonstration about how this works when you're with someone who thinks different from you. So I need a Republican and I need a Democrat. So I'm going to ask you to DM Camille. Again, you click on the chat, you look at the name, you click and drag, and you go to Camille Leak and let her know your political leaning and that you'd be interested in the demo. So I get to lead 2 people through that. We get to watch and learn in real time. How do I sit with someone, feel that rush around something, and actually settle it and connect to them, right? As I'm settling with that rush. So, but I can't do it without some volunteers. So please reach out to Camille, and then we'll see where we are in a little bit. But for now, let's see how we start practicing this individually. What does this mean? First thing is posture. The number one thing is posture. So I want everyone to notice, are you sitting on something that has a back, that your back can lean against, that has back support? If you're not, I strongly recommend you get something. You change where you are. It's going to change everything we're doing. And even me saying that, notice how many of you went back and felt the support. If you didn't, do that now. Feel what that's like, right? And then we're just going to lean forward a couple inches until your back's not touching the support, and hold that and feel the tension that starts to happen. We're not even talking about anything, right? Just the physical change of posture. Notice your mouth, your throat, your chest, your stomach as you lean forward from that support. And then lean back and drop into it and notice that same thing. Notice, does it soften? Does it shift? We're going to do it again, but just enjoy the support for a moment. Feel that. Really notice your stomach, your chest, your throat, your face, and start leaning forward until your back's not touching that support. And once it's not, just freeze there and hold that. And again, notice the tension. Notice the parts that start constricting. You might even feel blood pressure rising. You might even notice your heart rate increases. And then notice the difference as you fall back and let the chair, whatever you're sitting in, completely hold you for a moment. This is the most simplest shift we have to make in conversation, is having something hold our back. You know that phrase, I got your back? That has somatic roots. That has one of my favorite teachers in somatics, Ian Van Zandt. She'll often, when she's working with people on stage, she'll put her spine against theirs. She'll hold them like that. And it's because the spine feels there's a whole world behind me, something isn't supporting me. And the body, the physiology actually changes and you start having a stress response as you're leaning forward. Now, think about when we're engaged in controversial conversation and we're not sitting back relaxing usually. We're leaning forward, we're at each other. So we're getting into a constricted physical posture already, which does not allow that charge I talked about earlier to move freely. It causes it to build up even more. But when I sit back, and then this part too, let your head be held for a moment. If you need a pillow, you can use it. If you have a headrest, if you want to put your head against a wall, even let your hand hold your head. Just let the head be held for a couple seconds. Feel the release of your body when your head's being held. Very important to notice these things. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone. I know this is very strange. This is very like subculture, counterculture stuff, but you're talking to somebody and you feel the revved up and you remind yourself, oh, where's my back? And maybe you let your head rest for a couple seconds. That charge, that adrenalized state starts to slow down a little bit. Every time that charge comes down, that pressure relieves from your body, your mind opens because your brain is not built in the way where you are allowed to think clearly when you're in a stress response. We physically can't do it. It's impossible. We're not made to do that. So we have to keep our bodies out of a stress response when we're engaging with stressful content in order to keep an open mind. I can want to be curious all I want, but if my body isn't supporting curiosity, it won't happen. So the first piece is this. Am I supported? Are my feet on the ground? Very important. If your legs are crossed, that creates more constriction, right? We want to not, we have the least amount of constriction as possible when we're going into this with someone. So the feet are on the ground, the spine's against the chair, and then even better if your head can be supported, or you take little breaks to let your head be supported. So that's the first thing. The second thing from this place is looking around the room. Because remember what I said earlier about the narrow vision? That narrow vision actually creates an adrenal response. An ophthalmologist I used to work with wrote a book, and he talked about this, where when you're looking at something close, it actually stimulates your adrenals. When you're looking further, it not necessarily calms them, but helps them go back to more of a resting state. So try it with me right now. Notice what it's like when you're looking at the screen. Notice the back of your neck, your throat, kind of all these muscles up here that engage when we're talking and looking at something. And then look away from the screen, look in a distance, whether it's like 7 feet in the distance, or you have a window and you can just look out as far as you possibly can see, and track those same parts of the body, the face, the neck, the chest, especially the throat. Notice, does something come down? Come back to the screen, you'll feel it. Look at the screen. Notice if you've leaned forward, is your back against the support you have? Take in the screen, see what that's like, and then again, look away. And this time, as you look away, look at the room around you. Like, check out the ceiling, look at the plants, the decorations, look to the left and right. This is essentially what we're doing. We're learning how to look to the left and the right without getting triggered. So see what it's like to look around the room and see the more of the space you're in, right? This is what we want to be able to do when we're in conversation with somebody. Now, some of you are yawning, some of you are stretching, some of you will notice your breath change. That's your body moving into a parasympathetic response. We want parasympathetic. That's the opposite of the stress response. So these are so important. I mean, imagine if we learned going into debates to do this, how it would change the whole conversation. How instead of attacking and dehumanizing each other, we'd settle, we'd be a little more curious. We might be like, wow, how do you believe that? That's fascinating. Rather than, what, you believe that? Right? It's like such an aggressive explosion when I don't have the support. But in the support, my mind is open. Literally, my brain, a part of my brain is actively working now. And it says, that's interesting. Well, I know I'm safe. I feel the chair. I know where I am. I'm in this room. Everything's okay right now. This is a belief and a person I'm working with, not a state of danger. And that's the big difference our bodies need when we're going into these conversations. And one of my favorite ways of practicing this is media, watching news that would activate, trigger me, anger me, and doing these practices. It's an amazing way to build your capacity for difference before you dive into being with an actual person that feels too big, right? Or before you see family members that overwhelm you or trigger you or make you angry. Playing with the news, going on YouTube and typing in something you are so against, a policy you're against or a political belief you're against, and listening to people talk about how much they love the thing you're against, and keep putting your back against the chair, keep taking breaks to look around the room, tracking your breath. And eventually your body will start to tell the difference between I'm triggered and I'm actually threatened. And that's the main thing we're teaching our bodies here with this whole conversation about politics and controversy and difficult conversations. If you can tell the difference between I'm triggered and I'm threatened, it's like you're untouchable. And I would love you to speak to that, Camille, in your language, the triggered, threatened piece.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly when it comes to politics and policy, it's really easy for us to say, well, absolutely, it's a life or death situation. If this happens, blah, 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 will happen across the world. XYZ is going to take place. It'll be the fall of democracy. And so then I like to invite people to notice, yes, let's say that is true. I'm curious to notice, what are you experiencing right now in this moment? So, for example, let's say I'm in conversation with someone and they say they support a policy that I think is incredibly detrimental, or even not even a policy. Let's say, so I'm Muslim, and let's say they say something like, all Muslims are terrorists and we have to defend ourselves against them. Now, there's a part of me that says, oh my gosh, that's incredibly inflammatory and dangerous language. Do you know what kind of impact that has, not just on me, but on other people who are Muslim, my friends who wear a hijab, the things that they have to encounter? There's a part of my body that goes into that story, that experience, which is a very real experience. And it's also important for me to notice right then in that moment, when that person is telling me that all Muslims are terrorists, what am I experiencing? Well, in that moment, I'm actually still safe. I haven't directly incurred any threat, any harm, any impediment on my agency because of that person saying all Muslims are terrorists. And if I can orient to that, I'm no longer triggered because I'm not responding to a potential future threat. My body's responding to what's happening right in front of me.
And that's really important because our bodies cannot tell the difference between future and past. That's why PTSD exists. It's like the echo, the reverberation of what has happened and the expectation that it's going to happen again, somatically, not even in the mind. Definitely in the mind too. You'll get flashbacks. I used to have them. They were horrible. But in the body, you'll have this tension as if something's going to happen at any moment. Anyone here that's had a traumatic event understands what I'm talking about. Anyone here has had anxiety attacks or panic attacks. It's like there's just this feeling that you're just not okay. That's because your body has the inability to notice where it is right now. Your mind knows where you are, like here I am in my office, but your body hasn't caught up to it. Your body is still constricting and preparing and bracing as if there's a car wreck about to happen, as if someone's about to scream at you, as if a bomb's going to go off. That's what the body does. It stays braced to protect you because something had once happened. So Camille's example is perfect because you're sitting in the situation, hearing something that might even be personally inflammatory or feel personally threatening. And in reality, she is not threatened by life, threatened by ideal, but her life hasn't been threatened. She's okay right there. That lets her, just like Daryl Davis, stay open to this person and be curious and have a connection. And it's in the connection that something transforms. It's not in the debating. It's not in the proving. It's in the connection something transforms. When I can connect to your humanity, regardless of what you think, something has just transcended what we think to be what a relationship is supposed to be, or identity, or who I'm allowed to be friends with and who I'm not. All those limitations break away. But to get there, we have to actually feel where we are right now. Do we have anyone that volunteered?
We do. We have 2 volunteers.
Oh, I'm so excited. Okay. So everyone, first of all, just think about what I said about those pieces. Your back being supported, your head being held. And the third one that's really helpful, especially when you're practicing this for the first time at home or you're just starting, a pillow over your belly with your arms around it. It can seem very childlike, and it is, and it's sophisticated. It's sophisticated childlike stuff because that pillow presses against your stomach there and it actually opens something called the diaphragm. And when the diaphragm's open, it lets the energy, that adrenalized state I talked about, move freely through your body. It doesn't stay shut down. So it can actually prevent panic attacks, just holding a pillow. It's the simplest thing in the world. So if everyone wants to grab a pillow as we go into this, it's going to be really great because as you witness the individuals, you're going to feel things with them. I'll pause and let Camille get them together for us, and then we'll begin.
Absolutely. Libby, can you just come on camera so I can spotlight you? Perfect.
Excellent. So Jet, if you can unmute yourself, that'd be great. Perfect. Hi, Jet. Hi, Libby.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this.
Hi.
So the first thing we want to do is just like I started out with, saying, feel your support for your back. We just begin there before we even go any further. And make sure your feet are flat. So even if you're in a bed, the bottom of your feet are on the bed. So there's some pressure under them. Excellent. And you can have the pillow over your stomach, or I see Jet, the hands can even be there too. Pillow, great, Jet. And so we just want to start with that pressure over the stomach, our back against the chair, and our feet on the ground. And what I'm gonna be doing is going in between each of you to have you tell me what you're noticing in your body. Okay. All throughout this, I'll be pausing you and telling you. And it's gonna be about 15, 20 minutes just so you can orient to that. So Jet, just tell me how your body's doing just being here on camera in this posture. What's happening for you?
I'm relaxed, just no issue, no problem, just relax and restful.
Beautiful. Libby, what are you feeling?
Yeah, the same. It was pretty notable to me that just doing what you asked me to do, my breath, calmed down.
Awesome. So what I'd like to know from you two is just don't say it yet, but just think about the one thing that's really important for you in this election, because you're both from different sides of the aisle. What's the one thing that just really means a lot to you? And just think about it for a moment and feel into it. And I'm going to ask Jet to go first and then Libby. Just when you have it, Jet, tell us what that is.
Yeah, the one thing that I hope that if Kamala gets to be elected president, that she would not continue her defunding of police type of issues.
Perfect. So just sit there with that. Perfect. And who do you want to win, Jet?
What was the question?
Who would you like to win?
I lean red. However, I do not really like Donald Trump's character. However, I am a conservative, so therefore I like conservative policies. Even though I strongly dislike Donald Trump's character, I do like what he did during his 4 years that he was in previous presidency. He selected Supreme Court justices who are conservative leaning in my way of thinking. So based on that, I would be voting for Republican, not necessarily Donald Trump.
Perfect.
If that makes sense.
I get that. That makes perfect sense. So pause before we go to Libby, and everyone notice your bodies. Like notice what you're feeling. Those of you who agree with Jet, notice like what it feels like to agree with somebody. Those of you who disagree with Jet, notice what that feels like. I'm just going to pause to notice that first before we go to Libby so we can track our own bodies. Has your back come off the support? Is it in the support? And then Libby, tell us the most important thing for you for this election and who you would like to win.
The most important thing to me is the preservation of democracy, the rule of law, the Constitution, and not having a president who is beyond the rule of law. so we don't lose the 200+ year experiment in democracy that we've had so far. I would like Kamala to win.
And just feel that. And we just pause. Everyone else notice. Everyone watching, notice the things I asked you with Jet. Notice the same with Libby. Those of you who agree, feel the agreement. If you disagree, feel the disagreement in your body. And the first thing I'm going to ask is for Libby, when you hear Jet talk about what he cares about, why he's voting for Trump, his beliefs, what's important for him, what happens in your body? Now, what you think about it, what happens in your body?
Yeah, I get adrenaline moving through my system. I can feel kind of constriction in my chest and my throat. I'm living in that state these days, though.
Yes.
So it wasn't like I heard him and went, oh, I hear this all the time because of everything I do. So I'm living in that state, but that's what happens. I can feel adrenaline in my body, and it's mostly located in the upper part of my torso.
So we're going to pause before we go to Jet and just stay there with that. Just notice how that's there. Maybe put your hand on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is good for all of you whenever whether you're watching us feeling it or when you're in it yourself, really give support to the place that has that rush.
I also have a bit of a knot in my stomach.
Good tracking. So you're noticing all these places the body constricts. And while we do that, before we go to you, Jet, when you look at Jet, when you take him in, just notice one thing that settles you about him. Not his beliefs, but how he looks. What would that be?
Oh, totally. I felt love, honestly.
Where do you feel that?
For the man. All over my body. It's mostly up here, I'd say, but just fondness, affection, respect, whatever. It's up in the upper part of my body.
Nice. So let's just pause and feel that too. Now, this is important, everybody. This is the beginning of this work. It's noticing the difference between my trigger, what comes up to meet the beliefs someone has, right? And then the other person's humanity. How do I feel the person's humanity in front of me? So Libby's tracking that beautifully. Jet, what do you feel when you hear Libby's beliefs, who she's voting for? What happens in your body?
Yeah, when she specifically talked about her important topic is democracy. She wants to vote for somebody who would uphold the 250 years of democracy. It triggers in my mind or to my body, oh my gosh, there you go again. So
stay right there. Perfect. Stay right there and go back to the body. What does that feel like in your body?
I think it gives a little tense
yes.
to say, there you go again. Yeah.
Perfect. And so you did that. So notice the shoulders. I'm going to ask you to check out your chest and your belly. What do those areas feel like? There it goes again. Where do you feel that?
I didn't feel as much because, as you said, lean back with the thing on my stomach. So that's what I did.
Beautiful. Okay. So you noticed that rush, and you leaned back and you felt that settle a little bit. Great. Now, the other question, when you're looking at Libby, outside of what she believes in, what thing about her, what part of her can you feel something settled about?
Well, her facial expression, she was still smiling as she was talking. Yeah. So therefore, it didn't give me too much alarm. I come to a conclusion. Yeah, she's not angry at me. She's still smiling, even though I do not agree with her concept of democracy is in danger if Trump wins. Nevertheless, she was smiling, so I felt, okay, that's all right. There's no threat.
Now pause there and let's track that. When you see her smile and you realize there's no threat, where do you feel something in your body kind of settle in response to her smile?
Yeah, it's settled. I didn't feel tense in my body as before. Yeah.
Beautiful. So let's just pause there and let you both take that in, like take each other in, notice your support of your back, notice the parts that settle, notice the parts that kind of revved up. And we're just really taking like 30 seconds here, no talking, just taking each other in and simultaneously feeling our chair. And within this 30 seconds, taking a break from the screen just to look around where you are, really take in the room you're in. Like see where you are before you come back to the screen. Really helpful and important.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to go to you, Libby, but take your time. You're doing great. Just kind of orienting the way you are, taking each other in again, especially the things about each other you like.
Mhm.
Like his presence, you felt this fondness, her smile, you felt like, oh, I'm not being attacked. There's no threat here. When you hear him say, and again, what's fascinating, everybody, is notice how our minds want to respond to things. Okay. So even when I ask you the question, when you hear him say, I disagree with your idea of democracy going away under Trump, right? What happens in your body, not your mind?
Yeah, I got a jolt of fear. And
Where?
I felt it right through the middle of my torso.
Perfect.
And mostly in here, I'd say, but it comes up and then sits right here like,
And let's feel that fear.
okay. And it's running through my arms now.
Good. Good noticing. So through the arms and the torso, and you feel that back, and you
Yep.
feel your feet.
Yep.
And maybe take a 5-second break to look beyond the computer.
Yep. That helps a lot.
It helps a lot.
A lot. I'm looking at something very beautiful.
Awesome. So what happened when you looked away? What did your body do?
Oh, my body drops. It's mostly I notice that I start to breathe again, that I'm holding my breath a wee bit, right? And then it's like, okay.
And then when you look at him, and again, you just think of that statement, he disagrees that democracy will go away or change under Trump.
Right.
Does it come back? Does it stay the same? What happens in your body?
Well, when I think of that statement, I can feel the constriction. When I just look at him without thinking about that statement, I feel fondness, right?
So that's really important because you're noticing the difference between the statement triggers me versus he triggers me.
Yeah,
That's a beautiful separation. Excellent. So let's just pause there a minute. Jet, what's happening for you as you watch her and she's doing this? What are you noticing?
I I I was somewhat surprised that she was feeling tenseness when I said that democracy is not in peril if Trump is elected. Even so, it just gives me, my body didn't feel anything. I just felt like maybe she's just having a misunderstanding.
So even that thing you're doing, like no, let's notice the shoulders, the chest, the stomach. Just see what's happening there when you think she's having a misunderstanding. What happens in your body?
Obviously, my body is reacting to something like, I can't believe it, sort of
Yeah.
approach.
So stay right there. Just notice that. And Libby, when you witness him just having that reaction of I can't believe it, what happens in your body?
Once again, I get a jolt of fear, like, really? Like,
right.
oh, right? I can't believe they would think that there is no threat. So
this is great. Yeah. So notice how both of you get like something, some kind of jolt happens when you're like shocked what the other person believes in.
Right.
So just notice that for a moment. And then I'm going to ask you, Jed, again. Let's come back to Libby as the person outside the belief, like whether it's the smile, something else. What are you seeing now that lets your body settle just being in her presence?
I'm okay. My body's relaxed. No issue.
And so you can feel the difference between what she believes and who she is in this moment.
Yeah, I accept what she believes. There's nothing much I can do to change her mind.
What does that feel like, Libby? I'm curious. When he says, I accept what she believes, there's nothing I can do to change her mind. He sits here. What does your body do with that?
I still feel little jolts of fear. Yeah.
And what's the fear saying? Does it have any story or words or asks?
It's, I mean, I don't mean to sound that it sounded a little bit patronizing. I don't think that was intended. And we're talking about that effort to get to the point where but it sort of sounded like, well, these, she's wrong. So there's nothing I can do about it. And I think part of me kind of goes again, like a little hard to breathe.
Yes, just notice it. Just notice like a little hard to breathe. And then when you feel that again, maybe take a break from the screen since that really worked for you earlier.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I think you're getting, like I say, that it's not just my reaction in this moment. I've been
Oh
living
yeah,
inside this space for a very long time. Right?
absolutely,
Yeah, so
absolutely.
I'm carrying
But
old stuff. It's not about what he's doing necessarily.
and so when you look back at him, when you
Yeah.
think, okay, here's the thing you said, I felt that, there's him. Where does your body feel? Okay, there's him outside this thing he said or believes.
Yeah. Okay. The whole body drops.
The whole bed,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Let's just notice that for a moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Just a man with a different life story.
That's literally all it is.
Yeah.
And so both of you notice that with each other for a moment because we're going to start closing.
Yeah.
Just to see what it's like in this moment, just to look at each other. A woman with a different life story, a man with a different life story. And here we are just taking in the human outside of the story.
Yeah.
Okay. And just tracking both your bodies, feeling your back against the support. You're feeling your feet. Yeah. Love the pillow or the hands, whatever we're using. Taking a break from each other for a couple seconds to look around again.
Mm-hmm.
And then one last time, taking each other in. And I'm just going to ask each of you very briefly, not about content, not about what the other person believes, but just tracking your body as you take the human in. What do you feel right now, Jet? What do you notice?
I feel relaxed. I have no issue or problem.
Nice. What do you feel, Libby?
Yeah, the same. I mean, just again, fondness for the man and willingness to do this, and
Beautiful. Okay, we're going to close that for now, and we're going to go to the group for a little bit. Thank you two so much.
Thank
And
you.
I always
Thanks, Jet.
Thank you, Jet. Thanks, Libby. And I always ask people watching, you can go to your reactions at the bottom and put up an emoji. It's a great way to kind of show gratitude to the people that go before us and help us experience and teach us this. So thank you both again. That was beautiful. Now, what's so important here for me, again, that we're seeing is this is how you establish the controversial conversation, right? We didn't go into controversy. We like touched it, but we didn't go into it. This is how you establish it. You have to anchor yourself first with the other person. So like both of them were reporting, you get a sense of there's the human. I feel fine with the human. There's their belief. There's a rush with their belief. We have to establish that first. Once that's really established and you feel where you are in the room and you feel the support you have, then you get to start pendulating back and forth between, tell me why you believe that. Tell me more about this. I really disagree, but it's interesting you believe that. And you get to ride those waves together with actual content, with the actual topic, even without a mediator. I was just kind of teaching them how to go into the body first. But what was important about that is notice what 15 minutes or so, however long that was. Notice how when we sit with someone, the first thing we tend to do is find what's wrong and we go to the mind, right? So we leave body completely and we leave our beautiful human ability to connect to the human. Again, we have this innate ability to connect to someone else's humanity. No question. It's just in there. It lives in our bodies. So when we can feel that ability to connect to their humanity, and simultaneously notice, wow, what you say really stresses me out, then you're ready to have these controversial conversations. If you can't separate those two things, if you think what they say is them, you're not going to be able to connect to the person, right? You're going to be trying to get rid of what they're saying so that you can finally feel settled. But they were both able to establish feeling settled first with the posture. Then they were able to be all throughout to establish how they felt settled with each other, like what they liked about the other one, just visually speaking. And they could play between the moments of trigger and the moments of calm because they already established that. Camille, what would you add to this? And then I want to take in some feedback from the group.
Yeah, so a couple of things stood out for me in that incredible demo. I want to thank you both for being so generous. First, noticing the similarities, even though they seem different. One big similarity in the demo, and that many of us experiences, I can't believe they think that. Even outside of what they think, notice that that is the reaction in the body. I can't believe they think that, and how that can be a jolt. We saw that come up at different points in the demo, that surge of activation, that surge of energy of what? I can't believe they think that. And notice that appears in us all when we're having conversations. And again, that's a point for empathy, not that we have to empathize with what they believe, but that we can empathize with the shock of, I can't believe the person believes what they believe. The other thing that was really interesting to be with in that demo was the noticing of how what one person can do can then carry a story with it. So, for example, seeing Jet's response of, oh, here we go again. So it's not just her, but now all the other people I've heard talk about the fall of democracy. Or like we could also acknowledge, and I really appreciate you, Libby. You said, as you can see, like it's not just what's happening here. I'm bringing with me a whole other experiences. So maybe even that idea of, I don't think he meant it or said it patronizingly, but it felt patronizing. So that's a story. That's another lived experience. So we can begin to witness when I'm engaging with a person. When do I stop engaging with them and what they are saying? And I'm now engaging with either the story I've attached to it or the past experiences I've had with multiple people. And now I'm responding not just to one person in this moment, but I'm responding to 10, maybe hundreds of people in this one moment.
I'm so glad you said that because that's the difference between collective and individual identity. And when we're sitting with somebody, collective identity comes in. You know, someone says what they believe, like, oh my God, you're one of them. Like they become this group of people. And so suddenly you, lonely you in the room, are against this group of people. When in reality, you're sitting with one human being that you have a lot more in common with than you can imagine because you're only focusing on the one thing you don't have in common, right? So it's interesting when you can leave the group think, when you can leave the collective identity for the individual one, you're with the one person, and that's what creates the curiosity. Daryl Davis does not use collective identity in his work, or he would say all Ku Klux Klan leaders are racist. End of story. Won't go any further. It ends there. But he doesn't say that. When he's with the person, he says, I'm with a brother who is part of the Klan. I don't know why. I'm curious. Tell me. He's that individual is different for him than another Klansman. So he doesn't see them all the same. And so what I loved about what Camille just said is these beliefs they both have. I mean, think of the millions of people that share both their beliefs. Millions of people right now share the belief that there will be no democracy under Trump, right? Millions of people share the belief that democracy is going to be fine under Trump. It's so interesting to understand that these beliefs are beyond the human being. They're collective beliefs shared by individual people, right? And each individual is very different and unique. So it's beautiful when you're able to do what Camille just said, where I can sit there and parse you from the millions of the crowd, right? And that's what allows us to actually start connecting. And then a beautiful thing happens that I'm not going to teach you about here because it's a whole other story. It's called an uncoupling emerges, which is like if you think of Pavlov's dog or associations. Uncoupling means, oh, so all Trumpers or all people voting for Kamala aren't this. You start rewiring the mythology of the other because this one person just showed you something different. And then you start to realize, wow, right? Maybe people are beyond what they believe, and maybe they're beyond how I've been identifying them. And what happened for me from doing that kind of work is I started feeling just safe all the time. I mean, I walked around this country feeling really attacked in my mind all the time, even though no attack was happening, because I assumed this group of people was always after me and my lifestyle and what I believed in. And then as I met those group of people, and they stopped being a myth, but they became actual friendships and connections and relationships, my mind blew open. I was shocked. And it was fascinating to realize, wow, I can get along with almost anybody if I'm able to not dehumanize them. And if I'm able to take them out of the collective identity and just be curious about the individual, almost anyone I can get along with, right? If they're willing, if they're willing to sit there with me, I can sit with almost anybody because the belief is no longer a threat. It's a belief. And that gives us some again, practical awareness. Someone's in front of me screaming at me with like a knife running at me. I'm not going to sit here and be like, I'm safe. That's ridiculous. I'm doing this in reality. So I'm sitting with someone at a table talking to me about something I vehemently disagree with. I'm safe. I'm not in danger because we disagree. We think that and we feel that, but the more we practice this, the more we realize, wow, our beliefs aren't actually hurting us. Right here, these two people, we have the ability to have a relationship and what emerges from that. And that's mysterious. That's for all of you to go figure out. Each person's going to have a different experience. This isn't like formulaic because we're all very unique as people. So whoever you're sitting with, whoever you're talking to, whoever you're spending Christmas with, like whatever the situation is, where you're in an environment with people who think very different from you, when you try these practices of feeling your feet, feeling your back being supported, using your hands or a pillow to press against your stomach a little bit, you'll come back to your body. You won't leave it as quick. You won't dissociate as quick. You won't go into your stress response. Now, I'm done talking. We have 22 minutes left. We're not going to do a second breakout room. I want to go right into wisdom, weavings, questions, what you learned, what you saw, what's coming up for you. This has been a while you've been sitting here listening and watching. What are you noticing? And think about that. We're going to do 30-second shares. What questions do you have? What insights do you want to share with us? Really take a moment. And one thing I'm going to say, which I don't feel like even has to be said, but something in me wants to say it, don't use this time to debate or talk about policy. To me, that's going to be a waste of your beautiful 30 seconds. Use this time to talk about what's happening in your body about this process of connecting to someone you disagree with. So I can help you more, so Camille can help you more, so we can learn more together. Okay, turn it over to you, Camille.
Kamala Devi.
What lands for me most in this experience is, again, the commonality of our human experiences and emotions. And so when Jet, or when one of the participants was stating their point of view, I had the same exact reaction of, oh my God, how can this person think this or believe this, that he did in the opposite direction. Yeah.
Beanie. Oh, you're still in mute. There you go.
Okay. The thing I liked about the demo was it was so slowed down. It was like almost like in slowed motion. And when I get into these kind of conversations, I do the mistake you talked about earlier about like it's an argument or I gotta convince them, and then you just took one little thing and we didn't solve it. And that's such a different model, to just pause and be curious and contemplate just one thing. Like you just picked one thing from each of them. And it wasn't like, oh, we're done when the other person's convinced. So that just helped me just calm and slow. And it's not an argument.
Thank you for saying that. I'm so used to doing this, I don't even notice that. But that is the piece here. It's slow, and it didn't end because we agreed. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Jeannie.
R. Christopher.
Yeah, I put the R on there. We had another meeting. Right, yeah. But anyway, I appreciate the focus on somatic, the body, what the body's doing. I go to UC Berkeley as a conservative and as a Christian. I preach the gospel and I try to engage people on issues. And I really appreciate what was said about people's beliefs are sacred, because I do know that it's very hard to get people to question their most basic beliefs. That's why politics and religion is tough, because it gets to our basic beliefs. But I really appreciate that. I actually offer the opportunity for people to vent, to come and just express themselves freely.
Thank you. Carolyn. Oh, still a mute. You're still on mute, Carolyn.
Thank you.
There you go.
I'm short, so I can sit at a kitchen table and lean back and have my back touching and my feet on the floor. That does not work in any couch that has been created in the last 50 years. So what kind of situations can people get into when they aren't sitting in a situation that allows all those supports?
Couple things. So if it's an issue with stature, like we're talking about, you can put pillows under your feet so you can bring the ground up to you. And you can put pillows behind your back so you're bringing the support closer to you. If you're sitting, that's one way. One of the greatest things I do, standing, walking, whatever the place is in my car, I take my hands, I just press them against my stomach. But let's all try it. So take your hands like web them like this and just put it over your stomach. Just a slight pressure, just enough to feel like supported and comfortable. When you do that, you might already notice something starts to shift a little bit. Something comes down, gives you a little more access to yourself. Another thing you can do with your hands flat, you can put them on your lap and press down a little bit, just a little bit of pressure. And then another one, which we all do, but we don't tend to somatically experience it, cross your arms. Think about all the times you're arguing with someone, your arms are crossed. If you can slow down, like Jeannie said, and feel what it's like to have that protection there, isn't that nice? It really feels nice. There's something between you and them. That's why we just cross our arms without thinking about it. We're creating a boundary. We have to pause and feel it. And those little adjustments will help you feel your body and help that charge come down when you're with someone, even if you're not sitting. So thanks for asking.
And I'll just add on another thing that can be really helpful in those situations, like particularly we're noticing charge comes up, a lot of activation, a lot of energy. Like what Luis was saying, you may actually be walking. Take a moment to actually attune to the fact that your body's moving. And just like Jeannie said, slow it down. I don't have to respond verbally immediately. I may even want to slow down the pace that I'm walking, really noticing my feet hit the ground. And then I might want to respond. So those are things to play with too. Sometimes we get really nervous because we're containing all of that activation, that energy. You can even play with what are ways I can let my body move while I'm talking with this person. Kristen.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for the opportunity. Awesome information today. It helps me to realize how little I have ever paid attention to my body and my response. So one thing that I find myself thinking about is how we can attempt to practice this in less threatening situations with our family members, with our friends, and that might be a way to help us practice so it isn't so scary to do it when we're on the spot.
That's right. I have two things with that. One thing, which I said earlier that I wanted to repeat, is using media. It's super helpful. Going on Instagram accounts of people you disagree with, watching YouTube videos with interviews with people that talk about things you vehemently disagree with. When you can practice that, what you're really practicing at the end of the day is not the belief. You're not actually getting better with the belief. You're getting better at the stress that comes up from the belief. That's what we're actually working with here. It's not belief based in this conversation. It's the sensations that come up, right? When we know how to be with those, what's the problem with life? It's like life is full of those sensations. Whether someone dies, someone disagrees with us, we get embarrassed, we lose money. Those sensations come up all through life. Stress response is inherent to being alive. So when you're playing with media around content and topics that are hard for us, then you have a catharsis, you have a catalyst rather, something that's opening up that stress response for you that you're willingly going into it. And you can practice pausing the video and looking around like we did. And then watching it, you can practice moving your body. Essentially, what starts to happen is your nervous system learns how to regulate when you're watching or taking in something that's overwhelming to you. The other thing that can be really fun that I teach people a lot of time is doing this with people who you don't have, what would the word be? A power dynamic with, that you don't have like a deep relationship with, like family, someone that you're not afraid to lose. The bank teller is a great example. Someone that you're just seeing for like a couple minutes with like a nice transaction is over and done with. I'm not saying sit there and be like, what do you think about our democracy? But kind of go up to them and just see what it's like to feel in your body when you're talking to them, bringing in something really minor, really, really simple. Okay. And seeing how your body responds and realizing it's not that threatening here because I'm just leaving anyway. I'm just walking on to my day. This isn't someone I have to live with necessarily. So I teach a lot about how to not fawn, which is like that people pleasing technique. And I always tell people to start with a cashier. Start there when I say, how's your day? Be honest. Be like, oh, I'm feeling really sad. And what's it like to be honest with somebody? That's easier than telling, your husband of 30 years how you really feel about him. So you start in a place where there isn't so much risk, and then you kind of move to others. What would you add, if anything, to Camille?
Yeah, one of the things I like to do and encourage people to play with is exploring areas of difference that might be less charged than those related to politics or religion. So literally have a conversation with someone in your family. Like if you're part of the beehive and they're a Swiftie, what is your capacity to have that conversation? Hear them talk about Taylor Swift, you're just like, I don't get it. It's all about Queen Bee. But that's the way you build up to it. Or if you know that your dad is such a carnivore, but you're playing with veganism or vegetarianism, can you have a conversation about that? Or, even like these things that may be important to you, or you have like a bodily reaction around, but maybe just not as intense as politics. That's a way to build your capacity to titrate into having more conversations that are related to politics. Michael.
One reason why I raised my hand was that I wanted to say that I also Daryl Davis is also my hero. I admire what he is doing, but I'm not the kind of guy who would come to talk to strangers, and I appreciate that Braver Angels provides the venue for people doing this and giving some advice how to engage. So my time is off.
Thank you. Libby, please come off mute.
Hi, thanks. My question is, I've been holding space for people to do this for a really long time and listening to a lot of people. And even during and after the pandemic, not even around politics, I've experienced quite a number of people just getting triggered and flipping out and cutting connection, right? Do you have additional suggestions for how to clear buildup, right? I was saying I'm bringing in already, right, all this time of listening to people who I don't agree with and so forth. And it's starting to wear me down a little bit, and I need to keep doing the work.
Yes. So two things. The free option is my podcast. There is so much information there, like 220 episodes or more at this point, that will teach you a lot about this. It's Holistic Life Navigation. It's the same name as my company. It's a podcast. And if you go to my website, we have a self-paced course that just came out. It's $97 for the rest of this month, which is, I think, very affordable. And it's a 4-week course that will teach you exactly what you just said. How do I work with the buildup in my body? Because there's the practice of learning how to be with what's in me. And then when I know how to be with what's in me, it's really easy to have a conversation with somebody else. Because then when they say something that triggers me, I already have practice of being with that residual buildup, as you're saying. So outside of what I taught you today, I would highly recommend the 4-week course for sure.
Ruth.
I am surprised to find that I am feeling some amount of compassion for myself. Because I think I've been throughout this last period of time alternating between what's wrong with them and what's wrong with me. And I can see that my inability to respond in the way that I would like goes back a long ways, not something new. And so I appreciate all the shared and the tools and suggestions for growing up a little, I guess.
Yeah, I really see it that way. I see it as it's a maturity of the nervous system. And I love that there's compassion that you're finding, because one thing I'm hoping you're all getting from this is how biological this is, how inherited it is, how we are designed for this. We're designed to look at difference and assume it's going to threaten us. That's like a survival response from nature. So it's normal to be with difference. This is what we're doing is actually the abnormal thing. You know, if you go into nature and you see like a squirrel find a porcupine, it is not getting curious. It's like running away. So we're learning in a new way. And especially the more we come together as a humanity around technology and as Americans in more and more diverse cultures, we really learn or need to learn rather how to notice that ancestral thing of tightening up and being scared of someone I don't understand. That's just normal and reflexive. So no one here is bad or wrong for doing that. We just are giving you a more conscious way of assessing it, right? And being able to hold it and what to do with it when that comes up. But I appreciate the compassion because no one should leave here feeling bad about themselves or guilty that they have a hard time having conversations, that they're afraid of a certain group of people or they dislike a certain group of people. That's completely okay. It's just we want to learn how to work with that, not just be stuck in that. We can do one more question.
Michael. Oh, you're still on mute, Michael. Oh, Michael, you're still on mute.
Okay, sorry.
Oh, wait.
It's a different Michael.
No, other Michael, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, I needed to unmute mine.
Go ahead, Michael Von Heel.
Okay. As long as I'm having a conversation with someone where I can sit across the table and we can respectfully agree to disagree, then I don't have a problem with the situation. But it doesn't seem like we actually ever get to the issue that we really need to be there about. Do you have any suggestions as to how to dive beneath that and be able to address an issue that we do disagree about?
That's so specific to each person. I'll tell you what I mean by that. Think about what there's two parts we're talking about here. So there's like, I can sit down and respectfully disagree with you. That's what you're saying. There it is. And then there's how do we just get to the issue? Now, if we're talking about the issue, is our goal to fix the issue? Is our goal to have a similar, take on the issue? Like, what's the goal around the issue? Because that's where you need the other person's, consent to do that. They have to want that too. Like, I had this issue. I had this issue. Do you want to get together and figure out this issue? That's amazing. But most of us, and that's why I loved Jeannie's reflection on the demo, most of us won't have that opportunity, right? What's special about Braver Angels and these kind of containers is we're all here for the same reason. We have different beliefs, we have different abilities, we're new to certain things. We all want to how do I talk to the other side more? How do I have better connections? So in the real world, you're not going to run into as many people that are also doing this initially. Hopefully it spreads, it's the goal. So for me personally, I don't orient the issues at all. I orient to them if I'm really curious. Like I have a friend of mine, like one of my best friends, we are so politically opposite. And so I'm fascinated by his beliefs. And he's actually fascinated by mine. We'll have these really deep, 3-hour conversations where we're giving each other kind of the roots of where these come from and why they're sacred to us and stuff. But we don't get to any place of fixing or making sense of the issue. We're just kind of sharing it more, if that makes sense. So am I speaking to what you're asking, Michael? If you want to respond, I'm curious if I'm hearing you right.
I hear exactly what you're saying. And I agree that both people have to be, ready to do that. I just don't know how to get there. I mean, I can only be one half of the conversation.
That's exactly it right there. If someone isn't able to do that, if I want to and they don't want to, there you go. There's my limitation. So that's why, but this is what I love about this work is if I can connect to someone regardless of the issue, then nothing's wrong in my body. I'm at peace. I love you. I'm happy in the world, whether the issue has been fixed or not. Now, when the issue is about me directly, like when you're parking your car on my lawn, it's destroying my flower bed, that's a whole different conversation. When we're talking about collective policy issues, beliefs that aren't directly impacting me at the table in that moment, I don't tend to touch those. I would wonder how you would navigate that, Camille.
Yeah, so that sort of takes me back to the idea of a conversation versus a debate. Maybe I legitimately want to have a conversation, and this other person says they want to have a conversation, but it becomes abundantly clear to me that what they want to have is a debate. I get to set a boundary. I don't have to try to convince them that we need to have a conversation. Isn't my role to try to get them to a place where they have capacity to have a conversation. I get to witness them exactly as they are and decide how or in what way, if at all, I want to continue this conversation with them. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
So let's pause here because this has been a really, really beautiful session. I loved the demo participants. I loved all the questions. I loved the input. Thank you all for your attention. It's like 2 hours long. It's a long time to sit here. Maybe notice one more time before we get off. Like, are you being supported? How's your back feel? How do your feet feel? What's going on in your belly, your chest, your face, your throat? Are you feeling a little more settled at the end of this session? Are you feeling revved up? Has something shifted for you throughout? Like, what's happening inside of you? Really notice. Maybe look beyond the screen for a couple seconds and feel that shift to remind you. Like in the demo, Libby kept saying, wow, that really helps. So when you're with someone, you're talking to them and it's getting overwhelming, you just be like, oh, I just need to like a moment. You can break eye contact. It can be really helpful to do that. So I hope you take these things that I taught you today and just start playing with them on your own, like I said, with media, and then eventually with other people, and building your capacity for the charge that comes up when you disagree with somebody. I'm so grateful to Braver Angels for the work they do in the world and for organizing this and collaborating with us on it. So they're very worth checking out. They have so many more events. Those of you that are not new to them know that. Any of you that are new to them, please check them out. And Mojica put a link in the chat to my self-led course, but there's also, through that link, you can find all my other work as well. And my team and I do all of our events together. So if you want to see us again, we have many more things scheduled for the year and next year. So I'll end it there. Is there anything you want to add, Mary Beth?
Just a heartfelt thank you to you and your team. And we're going to have another event coming up on December 14th on processing the US election with somatics. So keep your eyes open for that as well. We'd love to have you join us.
Thank you, everybody. You can unmute and say goodbye. Nice to have you here.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
you.
team.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Deb.
Bye.
Bye.
That's great. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good weekend.